So hello everyone, and welcome to those of you that are joining us on Facebook and YouTube and any of the other platforms that we may accidentally be streaming to. I hope not too many. So yes, welcome to the Q&A panel discussion for the presenters that were presenting today for TDW-Live Day 2. Please accept my apologies. I've been using one camera over here all day, and now I have to remember to look at the camera up here, which is a slightly different camera for me. I am going to be making all of our panelists live here very shortly. We have generated a lot of questions over the course of the day, and we've had some great technology presentations, and we've had some some more specification type questions. So I'm going to make our panelists live right now, and hopefully you are going to see all of these wonderful faces from all around the world. So what I will do is I'm just going to give, for the benefit of those that didn't have the pleasure of joining our presentations today, I'm just going to ask everybody to just give a 30-second overview of who you are, what you presented on, and the kind of topic that you presented on. If we're not actually going to talk, if we could be on mute, that would be great, so that we don't actually talk over each other or get some feedback. So let's start with David.
Hi, Mike. Thank you. David Mannock. I work for Larson Software Technology, based in the USA. My presentation was around 3D graphics and converting 3D graphics to 2D, and also using 3D content in technical publications.
Excellent. Arthur, welcome.
Good afternoon. Yep, my name's Arthur Kershaw. I presented today on the at the AMRC's demonstrator. I'm Senior Project Engineer at the University of Sheffield AMRC. I'm project managing the Catapult project this year, where we're integrating several different technologies in a maintenance demonstrator, and we're going to prove out productivity gains using digital technologies, asset tracking, AR, augmented reality, and S1000D on a rail asset.
Excellent. Aston.
Hi there, so it's Aston Smith here from GPSL. I'm one of the account managers, so one of the sales guys. I've been working with the AMRC and Arthur in particular to help support the S1000D requirements of the rail MRO demonstrator that he presented earlier on today.
Excellent, cheers. Herr Schmiel.
Yes, sir. Hello, good to see you all. My name is Christian Schmiel. Just feel free to call me Christian. I'm working for Corel, and I presented S1000D out of the box with a Corel Draw technical suite.
Perfect. Fernando.
Hello, I'm Fernando Alvarez, over here at Raytheon, based in Tucson, Arizona. I run the technical publications team on Team Eagle, and I presented on the utilization of the S1000D Common Information Repository in a CSDB.
Excellent, perfect. And that was the last presentation of the day. We saved the best till last, so well done. So, Mr. Marshall Lewis.
Hello. Hello, good afternoon, good morning. My name is Lewis Marshall. I work for STL. I work in pre-sales and consultancy. I presented today on STL's current and future plans for our viewer.
Excellent, cheers. Mark, I know that you were having a couple of audio issues. So, Mark Willis.
Hi, hopefully you can hear me. Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Mark Willis. I'm the Chief Engineer of CDS Defence and Security. Not, as I said in presentation, Defence and Support. I was corrected by my salesman for saying that. Yeah. I presented today on basically asking the question that because industry and governments today have a problem, can S10,000I fix it?
Perfect.
When I'm not working for CDS Defence and Security, I sit on the international steering group for S10,000I and I'm the chapter owner of Chapter 3.
Cheers, Mark. Sarah.
Hello there, everybody. Lovely to join you. My name's Sarah Carter. I'm the Software Support and Development Manager for WebEx Systems Limited. And I delivered a presentation on the interactive features available with IETP viewers, particularly with our product, Ultra Portal version 3.
Perfect. Cheers, Sarah. And I have to say, after your presentation, I felt completely relaxed, which was fantastic. And last but not least, Tony.
Yes, thanks, Mike, and hello, everybody. I'm Tony Harris. I work for TLM Nexus Limited, based in Brighton in UK. We provide managed application services to mainly MOD, air platform delivery teams, and the supply chain. Today, I talked about the program we're doing with Leonardo, capturing in-service data for the Merlin Mark II helicopter.
Brilliant. Cheers, Tony. And for those who are not aware of who I am, I'm Michael Ingledew, Managing Director of TDW. We run this annual event. Obviously, this year we've had to go online, and this is day 2 of 3 days of our presentations. Tomorrow we have an S-Series day where we have some of the if you like, some of the leaders of some of the specification groups that are going to be joining us. So over the course of the day, we had some brilliant presentations, and what I've done is we wanted to minimize the risk, the IT risk of things going wrong. And so what we did is we tried to pre-record as many of the presentations as we could. That being said, the live presentations actually went pretty well. And but what I've done is I've gathered some of the questions that we've had over the day, and what we're going to do is anybody who wants to join us, I see that we're getting a little audience now on YouTube. If you have any questions for the guys that are on the panel, please do feel free to drop them in there. I've got somebody monitoring Facebook for me, and all of the guys that are joining us on the TDW Plus portal, you know how to get in touch with me. So you can, if you have a sudden eureka moment, you want to ask another question, please just send it on over. So I'm just going to go through some of the questions that have come in, and in no particular order, and certainly in no particular level of importance. So how do we find out who is our country S1000D rep? We got again today. So I did answer this morning early doors. If you go to the formal website, s1000d.org, which is where you can now submit questions to the steering committee, and they have a log, and they track every query that comes in to the s1000d.org, and I know, because I'm involved in the discussions, that it gets discussed at every steering committee, which I believe there's another one tomorrow. If you go there and you request who is your country representative, somebody will get back in touch with you, and they will tell you who your country representative is. Anybody in the UK, that will be me. And but if there is somebody, I know that we've got lots of people in Australia, and we've got some Turkish on, and all those kind of guys. You need to just go there and ask the question. That's absolutely fine. They'll do that for. Another question that we had on the back of the vertical aerospace presentation. Now, for those that didn't join the vertical aerospace presentation, these guys are adopting S1000D in the eVTOL, the vertical takeoff and landing market. And S1000D unfortunately doesn't out of the box support exactly what they need from an S1000D SNS definition for the AVEE SNS definitions. So they submitted a formal request to the steering committee via s1000d.org. That was channeled to me because they are in the UK, and they gave a presentation on their wonderful platforms, which are truly amazing. But they have also made a request for a change to the S1000D specification. We're actually looking at two different angles. One is either adding some additional AVEE SNS definitions, or we're looking at adding another kind of section for SNS. That is the change proposals going through. So how long does it take? It's not very quick, unfortunately. As Mark will be able to testify, there's a lot of people involved in all of these specifications, lots of countries, lots of people with their own opinions. And what's good about this particular change request that we're putting through is there seems to be a consensus and an agreement that we need to be supporting the electrical vehicle or the electrical powered vehicles going forward. So it won't happen quickly. So there is an upcoming issue of S1000D coming out, which is basically going to have some minor changes. They will not introduce new capability. And so it can take anything up to 24 months for it to go into the specification. So that is the long and the short of it, I'm afraid. And it's just because there's so many people involved, and there is a tremendous, I'm going to try and talk about it a little bit tomorrow, is the level of effort that goes in behind the scenes on all of Mark alluded to it earlier on in his presentation, the level of effort that goes on behind the scenes and the people that are dedicated and put a lot of time into these specifications is huge. Right, I'm going to stop speaking. So this is for Arthur and I guess for Aston as well. In your presentation, the WabTech guys mentioned QR codes, and it wasn't clear whether you are using QR codes or if you plan to mark the assets with any kind of QR codes. I did give you a heads up that this question was coming, so hopefully you've rehearsed your answer. Are you going with stickers, or are you going with etchings, or what's your kind of vision for how you're going to do that asset tracking?
So we're going for a technology called RFID tagging. It's a technology where you apply a sticker with the RFID chip on inside it. You apply that to each asset that you want to track, and then at each location where you want to track the movements of those assets, you have antennas. In our demo, we'll be using 2 antennas, which will allow us to trace the direction of movement as well as its position. So that's the answer, really. No barcodes in this demo.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the questions that we get asked all of the time about barcodes and QR codes is that what happens when the product gets dirty? What happens when there's been some, cables rubbing on them, or any, heat as well is another question that we get. How does that affect them? So yeah, I kind of expected that question to come up, knowing the audience that we have. So and again on the AMRC demo, and if you guys didn't attend the presentations, go and have a Google of what they're up to at AMRC, or check out the GPSL website. It's really, really interesting. In fact, one of the comments that we had in from one of the delegates was, AMRC is doing exactly what we should all be doing. So now the question of rail decks came up, and I kind of preempted that this might come up. And are you planning to use rail decks? Is it something you're still considering, or are you going to just be doing your own thing with S1000D?
Yeah, so we're aware of it, as Richard said in the presentation. And however, for this phase of research on the demo we're doing this year, we wanted to use the most generic as possible form of S1000D. So we're using version 4.2. And the business rules we're using the ones that it comes with as standard. So we're not changing the business rules. What we're focusing on is content delivery, as opposed to anything in the realm of enterprise interfaces or interaction with other systems. So we're de-risking the AR side of things, as opposed to doing a full rail specific demo at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, and I suppose to lead on from that, like I said, we're AMRC, we're in an interesting position compared to what most of our kind of customers and collaborations, which is that they had a choice over versions of S1000D that they use. So, and again, it made sense to use 4.2, the latest kind of fully released version of S1000D at the time that we can support in Windchill. So, and again, the S1000D is more of a kind of basis for that. Again, digital continuity, having the data in the specification, so that they can be used kind of further down the business processes for things like augmented reality, for things like, I said, the tagging and things like that. So again, a unique position for the AMRC, where they actually had a choice over the S1000D version. So yeah, it made sense certainly for this demonstrator that I said we stick with 4.2 S1000D kind of as out of the box as possible, because of course they're not coming from legacy data as well. This is a brand new system and demonstrator. So yeah, made sense to keep it simple and keep it straightforward as possible from a 1000D point of view.
Yep, and I mean, it makes absolute sense, and there's nothing stopping you doing that, right? You can do whatever you like in terms of which SNS you want to adopt. So the reality is there's nothing for rail in S1000D. I think that's why the genesis of the question. But thanks for clearing that one for us. So we did have a comment that came into us via YouTube. I thought I would just throw this out there as well. This is not now. This came in yesterday. Is the problem that people, managers, don't get is they don't understand what they are actually getting from structured information. And and I think that was a follow-on from the presentation I gave yesterday on why we use structured languages, why we use XML, what do we get from XML, where is the ROI, and those kind of things. Obviously AMRC have identified that. The guys at Vertical Aerospace have already identified that. So I know, Tony, I'm going to leave the AMRC guys alone for a little bit. I know that a couple of things that came in for you guys. So now, for those that didn't attend the TLM presentation, it was all about capturing data from the Merlin fleet and doing some analysis on that. So is it your plan to support S5000F going forward, or are you going to be doing your own flavour of capturing data and analysing that data and doing your analysis? Was the question that came in.
Yes, thanks, Ryan. It's a good question. I think we definitely will be coherent with S5000F, but as I said at the time during the presentation, we haven't been involved in its development so far. It's kind of emerged into our space, or we've emerged into its space maybe. So I think definitely be coherent with it to start with, and then see where it goes. But yes.
Excellent. And while I've got you on the line, I'm going to ask you another question. Now, so as I mentioned in my lead into your presentation, is that wherever I go, certainly in the UK MOD, is I see TLM Nexus everywhere. So now we did have one specific question. Do you have any examples of any kind of data analytics happening in shipping, any kind of ships that you're working? Do you have any examples of where you're doing something similar with Navy platforms, for example?
We're not quite as established in Navy because of the background being air, as you know, Mike. But the answer is yes, we do. I can't share specific details here. But if you ever ask the question, wants to get in touch with me, perhaps through yourself, Mike, then I'm sure we could. There are some details we can share. But yes, I mean, we are doing some work in the maritime domain.
Excellent. And I think this might be, no, it's not. Is it? Oh, no, yeah, it is your last one. And are you or are the users able to capture their data on tablets, or does it require a desktop machine for them to run off and do their data inputs, or are you giving them iPads or anything along those lines?
Yes, we're definitely working on the sort of bring your own device field. So it started off just on classic desktops, but obviously works on laptops. But we're also doing work on tablets as well. Excellent.
So again, I guess we can just point people at you, and you can have a conversation with them, and you can point them at how you're working with that. Cheers for that. So now for the IETP vendors, we had lots of questions about IETPs, as we do. Every year we get lots of engagement around interactive manuals, and I think every year on year, we see the change in capability and functionality and all those kind of things. So one of the limitations that we're seeing with using IETPs is the displaying of wiring data. How do your viewers support that? So let's go with you, Sarah, because you look nice and ready to answer that.
So with UltraPortal's IETP viewer within our distribution system, we do support the wiring data modules within S1000D, and they are fully supported with our style sheet to be displayed in that IETP viewer.
Lewis, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think the issue with the wiring diagrams themselves is one of tiling, isn't it? So I've seen some use of our viewer, not done by us, but done by some customers in the DoD, where they're just basically tiling parts of their diagrams and then zooming in on those bit and then zoom in and out on that. So it's not us doing all the hard work, to be honest, but our customers are doing it with our tool.
Yeah, I know.
So rather than the data that Sarah's talking about, it's actually more about the graphic.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the graphic and the size of screens and the ability to be able to scroll and zoom and pinch and do all of those kind of things that you would want to do. We all know. Sorry, go on.
Just one more thing on that, Mike, is there's lots of opportunities with SVG. I think that's where a lot of people are heading with wiring. Is there's so much kind of free-form interactivity you can do, so you're not confined by CGMs. It seems to be a rule, and obviously there's support on tablets as well for things like CGMs, SVGs.
So I'm gonna start the SVG versus CGM debate in a couple of minutes, and I know that David will have some opinions on that, attending one of his webinars last week. Aston, I know you guys have got a viewer. Have you got any thoughts on that? And Fernando, I know you do too. So I'll come to you on that as well. Aston?
Yeah, so at the moment, I say we've actually released, I think it was 3 weeks ago, our Viewpoint ITP viewer. So I said we're very much in the early stages of engaging with our customers to find out what their exact requirements are. So as I said, that's not the question that has come up at the moment for us. Our main concern has been around offline viewing, I think, which has been the biggest bug point of our customers who are wanting to look at the viewing technologies. But as I said, it's interesting that we weren't exactly sure about the market for viewing technology just because of certainly the UK monopoly that certainly has across the board, and it seems to be that a lot of our customers are actually talking to us and saying maybe there's another option and discussion to be had.
Okay, excellent. And Fernando, it's easy for me to ignore you because you don't have your camera on. But what's no, that's fine. What's Raytheon's position on wiring data? I know that you're doing some stuff in this area.
Yeah, so the majority of our customers currently, they're just utilizing, let's say, a 051 with the descriptive, and what they'll do is they'll load up their wiring diagram as like an SVG or CGM, something interactive. Because the main thing that we run into is wiring data is nice, the schema, but it's incredibly complex to write. Nobody really wants to author these data modules. But we did have some plans in the future to maybe utilize some of the tagging in the schema, because what we see is where we have the opportunity to actually maybe create something along the interactivity of such, let's say, illustrated parts data module. You have your line item, and then you have a connection to it via hotspot or in this case, a wiring diagram. So that's kind of the route we're looking at right now to get more complex. But in order to do that, we're looking for a nice business case. And for the most part, as I was saying earlier, the majority of our customers, they just create a table and lay out their wiring data in there, and then just have a descriptive hold it, and then have an SVG link to it. So it's kind of like the process DM. They're all nice to have, but if the authors are unwilling to write them or don't have the capability of writing them, then it's kind of falls flat, that use case. But we are definitely going to be ready for when that does come. So we're looking to the future to definitely support that in Eagle Vision.
Okay, and Fernando, we didn't rehearse this because the next question is, the process data module looks great. but it looks like we've looked at it. It looks like a nightmare. How are the vendors supporting the easy creation of the S1000D process data module? Who wants to fight? Who wants to attack that one? Go on, Fernando. You attack that one first.
Yeah. So we actually started a program about 5 years ago. One of our programmers, he started creating just a GUI to help ease the authoring that, because trying to do that by markup is incredibly taxing, it's cumbersome, and it's incredibly difficult. We do have Raytheon programs that are utilizing them right now by hand, but our plan is to bring back that process DM builder, we call it, to allow you to utilize a graphical user interface instead of the XML tagging. And I think that would greatly benefit and maybe actually get more users and programs to actually use the process DM, because when you mention process DM, authors tend to shy away from it because it's just too darn complex and it's just ugly to look at in structured format. So I think if us vendors come up with a way to make that process of authoring it and then of course viewing it, then I think we can have something that's very beneficial to actually use that.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely. I'll come to you next, Lewis. So, but it's definitely where authoring meets programming. So, it's a technical author that's maybe used to writing a descriptive piece of functionality or a simple step task, is all over a sudden being asked to write if, else, and then statements and all kind of wonderful things in their head. They run to the hills. So, Lewis, what's your thoughts on the process DM?
Well, I think we'd all agree they're fairly nightmarish to author. Our roadmap has it that we would have a drag and drop thing. And what I would like to see is the ability to, say, build some stores of external calls that you would make, right? So, I think we've presented on this before with you, in fact, and it's this idea that you would not only have like an interactive process data module, but you'd have the ability to call out to external systems. And so that's when you have to write, calls to URLs, calls to programs themselves that may be completely alien to 98% of authors. So I think that would ease that. We have seen quite a lot of take up in our tool because we have quite strong support for it, particularly in the US Navy. But, like everyone else, I would agree that the authoring is problematic.
Yeah, I think if you can afford a programmer on your authoring team, then you're golden. You can get somebody that can write it for you. Let's go to you, Sarah. What's WebEx's view on the process DM?
Yes. So with our authoring tool of UltraAuthor, with our authoring tool, UltraAuthor, we try to give the author as much guidance as possible when it comes to the procedural data module by providing them with a schema view to help aid them in translating what they already know about writing these procedural steps into the XML format and making sure that they're able to build that valid XML that will
give them their process output, I guess.
Thank you.
I know it's a difficult one, but at the end of the day, which is why I said yesterday, we're dealing with XML documentation, right? So, and it's very, very hard and it's very, very difficult. And so I think Arthur's just dropped off. So, Aston, did you have an opinion on the process DM?
No, not massively. I said, I'm not from the technical world of the S1000D, so
definitely if we had Jeff on the call,
my guy wasn't able to join today to help out. Yeah,
Jeff would be all over that.
He's selfishly celebrating his 40th birthday.
What's that all about?
40. I know, it's disgusting.
Young pups. So now a couple of the vendors today, certainly the viewer vendors, mentioned, and I think David, you've mentioned it as well. I don't know whether you mentioned it today or whether I'm confusing myself with your webinar last week. Native viewing of CGMs in a browser without third-party tools. Can maybe because traditionally we used to have ISAView and other kind of tools like this to view our CGMs. And I know, Lewis, you definitely mentioned it in your presentation that STL is developing some capability to natively view CGMs. But David hasn't spoken for a little while, so let's let David kick off with native viewing of CGM graphics in a browser.
Yeah, we've already done it. So VisXView HTML5 is our technology that allows you to view CGM in a web browser without the plugin. So that's been around for 3 years. We've got a lot of customers utilizing that. But we're not kind of forcing people to do that. We've done a lot of work on SVG as well. In fact, we created a profile for SVG. So it only contains certain attributes and so forth. So it makes the SVG more interoperable for data exchange purposes. So we kind of sit in both camps. Whenever our customer wants to go, we'll go with them. If they want to use CGM or they want to use SVG, we have both kind of technologies.
Excellent. Cheers, Dave. And I have pointed people to go and watch your webinar from last week where you talk about the pros and the cons of each, and you talk a little bit about profiles. So if you're interested and SVG profiles are your thing, go and have a look at the webinar from Larson. But I do know that behind the scenes that there is some work going on within the S1000D community, and I hope that they'll be able to say something about that tomorrow. Lou, what's your thoughts on native viewing of CGMs in browsers?
Well, we throughout our suite, we give kind of equal focus to CGMs and SVG, so we treat them the same way. And so, some of the graphics that are coming converted from CGM to SVG through the Larson tools and through the SDI tools as well, they're all coming through. So doing those typical things where you pick up hotspots and all that. Now, when it comes to actually, those organizations that have tens of thousands or millions of CGMs in place, and they need to think about future deployment, right, to the iPad and to the Android devices, which is really the tricky problem, is that interestingly we ran a survey last year asking, do you want us to provide you with massive batch conversion functionality to convert them all within the CSDB from CGM to SVG, update all the references and new data modules, all that kind of stuff? And we were met with an resounding no to that. The reason being is people were extremely worried about the QA headache that they would end up with. So the route for us is probably similar. What we're starting to work on certainly is certainly what David's talking about, and that's an HTML5 canvas type solution so you'll keep everything in CGM all the way through your processes, all the way up to publish point, load them all into your viewer that way. But when it comes to display, it will then have an HTML5 canvas, which means it will work across anything that supports those HTML5 browsers effectively, which means you can ultimately use any device.
Excellent. So, I mean, it comes down to cross-device, right, which is kind of where the discussion is right now. Mm-hmm. So, Herr Schmel, do you have any thoughts on the SVG versus CGM? It's easy for me to look at all these wonderful faces, and all I'm seeing is your name, so I'm forgetting to ask you. So, please do chirp in.
Yeah, I'm working on buying a new webcam, so yeah, thanks for that. With the technical suite, we are more working on the content creation process. So it doesn't matter if somebody wants to have an SVG or a CGM. We can create both, and beyond that, even more. And yeah, when it comes to, let's say, batch processing or stuff, what I heard as well, we provide that capability as well. And these huge archives, we heard a lot about that, and that these are very valuable assets that nobody wants to touch. So yeah, what we offer is more on the working side there, that you can open them, create new ones on them, or change them and stuff, and not the viewing side.
Cool. Fernando, do you have any thoughts? SVG versus CGM, or how you're handling CGM, or either or?
Yeah, so we prefer, obviously, the SVG being a newer format. We always tell newer programs, if they're just starting up, that's probably where you want to go, the direction. because CGMs they're old and they are incredibly difficult to deal with sometimes. So we actually use Larson in our software, and our goal is to get those CGMs in a format that is able to be viewed in a browser, because that's, at the end of the day, that's what IEDMs are going to be running on. And you don't want to have a plugin to load your CGM in there. So that's definitely an approach we took when we first started Eagle Vision. We didn't want to have to include any sort of plugins. So what we do is we get the CGMs converted into SVG. That way you're able to view in a native browser. So that's kind of the approach we're taking. Of course, there's definitely some caveats with that, because sometimes you'll run into some CGMs that aren't easily converted. A lot of programs like to embed some raster files in CGMs, and that can cause a lot of issues. So we're aware of that. Larson's aware of that as well. So there are definitely some pros and cons of going each way. But as far as I know, being a programmer, viewing a CGM in a web browser, you're going to need some sort of background work and some sort of conversion going on, or a plugin, because it's just not native CGMs.
Okay. And Sarah, Aston, if you want to add something, say do this. If you don't want to add something, just do this.
I will just add that with Ultra Portal, we're taking a similar route as to what Lewis mentioned, where we're supporting both CGMs and SVGs, and the way in which we're able to do that is by utilizing the HTML5 functionality in order to make these viewable across multi-browsers, which again should extend to them being available across multiple platforms as well.
Yeah, excellent. Cheers. And I know, Aston, from a GPSL perspective, you support both as well. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so again, with part of the PT suite is the Illustrate for creating 2D and 3-dimensional illustrations. And again, the way Windchill stores that in its own kind of particular PTC-based file, but then you can still output that to SVG or CGM as per the requirements. And again, you can also reuse that if you want to do things like the augmented reality, like the AMRC guys have been doing. So again, save it internally as kind of a PTC file, but then once you actually need to output it for whatever reason, you can output it to whatever the requirement is.
Excellent, perfect. Thanks very much. Right, Mark, I'm going to come to you now. You've been sat there quietly and patiently waiting for. So we had a number of. So those of the that don't know, Mark presented on the S10000i or the SX000i or whatever it is you want to call it, the new guidance specification for the S series. Now, so a couple of questions that came up. A, how do we get access to the specification? Was the first question.
That's very easy. You go onto the ASD website, you plug into S10000i, and you'll get a link straight to what is currently issue 1.2 of the specification. Issue 2 of the specification, which is 450 pages longer, will be available probably by the end of the month, if not into early December, and issue 2.1 is going to be available on the 30th of April.
Okay, cool. And for those that don't know, and I don't want to steal too many of the thunder that might happen tomorrow, is all of the specifications are trying to triangulate on a 2021 release date for the specifications, so they can all be released. We can just mass information the market together. So so again, in the SX spec, is there going to be any guidance on buying COTS software?
Absolutely not. That's not that's not for us to do. It would be completely wrong of us to go out there and recommend software packages to people. And what people need to understand, of course, is the S series standards are an overlay on the current standards which are out there. So they don't replace the current standards. If you're working, for instance, in GIA STD 0007, you can carry on working in those, but just overlay the data stands on the top of it. The purpose of the S-Series standards, as we all know, is to make data transfer better and make it accurate. The idea of the S-Series standards is not to replace, business processes in companies that are currently out there, or to replace anything really. It's just it's there to enable the data processes and the data standards and data transfers to happen.
Excellent. And yeah, I mean, I kind of, and Kai, if that's it, if that's the question you were asking me to ask, I kind of assumed that was going to be the answer. I know that there is an initiative, and Mark, you might be able to help me out here a little bit because I've forgotten what it's called. There's an initiative going on within Team Defence Information right now where they are actually asking for software vendors to get involved in something to help shape the future of a specification going forward. I'm sure that Phil Williams will mention that tomorrow. I can't remember off the top of my head what it is. I'll certainly dig it out for tomorrow. Mark, we have had a couple of requests now for a copy of the recording that you did for us. So what I will do, if you're happy with that, is I'll send you the names of the people that have asked for it, and then you can contact them, and Karina can get in touch with them or something and send them a copy of the presentation, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine, Mark.
Yeah. Right, Matt. Hot potato question. Thank you very much. Always rely on you every year to ask me a question that's going to put me in a very difficult position. So we would like some examples of where the MOD is using other IETP solutions and not the corporate viewer. So now let me tell you, I have spoken to the man who knows during the wonderful music intermittent breaks that I've given you, and There are some changes afoot in the MOD. There are some, if you're involved in the Combined Technical Documentation Working Group, there was a great presentation given last year, I forget the gentleman's name, where they were talking about how they were now going to give options to projects on what tools they use. Now, Tony, you might know more than I do, I think, and certainly I know Karen and Melanie and you're all on. I think Merlin uses CIETP. I don't know. I'm just talking off the top of my head. So there are instances of where other viewers are being used within mod. It's a hot potato question. I don't like to get involved. It's not really anything to do with me, but yes, there are other viewers being used, and and I think BBMF yesterday, who you can argue is a special case, they have been given the authority to go and choose whichever viewer they want. So they're not being forced deliberately down any specific route, and Mark will tell you that. Mark Wilson will tell you that. So yeah, Matt, cheers for the question. So I will. I've also forwarded it to Ian Millward, who's the man who can answer formally on behalf of the mod, because I am not a spokesperson for the UK MOD. So 3D file sizes in viewers. Does this cause problems? I think you had yours was Dave. Yours did go a little bit slow, so I think it kind of exemplifies perfectly what the question is. So yeah, maybe start with you, Dave. Is the size and the viewability? I think 3D files are great and they look fantastic and they look wonderful. But is there a limitation on sizes when it comes to viewing, and we give them to a user for them to navigate around? And I'm sure Lewis will have an opinion on this as well. Dave.
Well, yeah, almost certainly. The file sizes are going to increase. It really depends on the format that's chosen, really. There's some quite light 3D formats out there. But you're definitely going to have a slowdown. And your platform, your delivery platform is the key, really, what you're going to deliver the information on. How much memory is it, if it's a computer, a desktop, a laptop, on a tablet. You would need to do definitely some prototyping, I think, before you actually delivered it to the customer. But there's like I think during the presentation I mentioned there's so many options you could give to the actual user of the information as well. And from my point of view, it needs to be a very guided information. In other words, they have certain options to actually go through an animation, or it connects to a procedure. So it's a really difficult kind of question to ask, but I would say is there's definitely a bigger overhead if you're delivering 3D as opposed to 2D.
Yeah, excellent. Sarah, what about Ultra Portal? How are you guys doing? Because obviously yours is more of a hosted solution. I guess you have a little bit more control over how you present information to the user. What's your view on that?
Yes, I think David's covered that topic very well there. Obviously, a lot of the limitations you're going to have are going to be based on your client's machine, what they're using to actually view the object. With regards to Ultra Portal, when it comes to converting the model and actually hosting it, that's all going to be based on the space that you have available on your actual server machine. But when it comes to rendering the actual object itself, it's going to be very much based on what's available within the browser on the device that they're using. So as an example, the example that I'd got was a GLTF file of about 30 megabytes, and that was running fairly smoothly for me through a Chrome browser on my machine. But obviously, again, it's going to be based on the capabilities of the machine on which you're viewing the document.
Excellent. Cheers for that. Christian, do you have any thoughts on file sizes 3D? Because there's a question coming your way very shortly.
Yeah, we have two areas of expertise. The first is that we process 3D data to 2D. So this is something that happens on your computer. And the other thing is just displaying this in a browser. And this is where we actually count on the XVL format of Lattice technology, which is the data module, 3D data module in our solution, and that is extremely compressed and comes with a viewer that can be embedded. For example, you can create 3D PDFs with it as well. So, yeah, that's our part of this solution.
Excellent. Aston, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so back within the kind of PC illustration tool, it does have some pretty good capabilities for kind of compressing down the 3D CAD data down into kind of an illustration file. So, I've seen 40,000 part assemblies kind of sliced up and zoomed through in, with virtually no lag. It can be pretty impressive from the way in which you can shrink the files from massive 3D models down into the actual illustration side. The question and the difficulty comes probably, Arthur can maybe answer, when you're doing things around more three-dimensional AR applications. So it'd be interesting to find out from Arthur how they found it from that point of view.
Arthur, did you want to chip in?
I was basically going to make a similar point to Aston in that we're looking into solutions which slot into the process in series, where before the data is sent to the AR application, it's processed by either ThingWorx or a third-party application that reduces the point cloud, reduces the polygon count, and it makes a model which is absolutely fine for the AR experience, but it reduces the detail level significantly. So that's the stretch goal this year, but we're looking into it, and it may be something that is on our demo in the future.
And I think as technology advances as well, right, this is going to become something we can handle. We're talking about 5G and all sorts of wonderful capabilities now. Lou, I don't think I asked you for your input on that. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, well, I think that I've heard some painful lessons learned on some programs, and I think some of the things that some of it is about the subject matter that you're using for your delivery of 3D, and I think some of the engine data, for example, that has caused big problems for people. I think we've run some demos where we're looking at, some of the lightweight models that have been generated through, say, some SAP software, for example, has actually proved to be quite small file sizes, and they may be for, hydraulic animations and things like that. So I guess it depends. You need to have a very clever strategy for building your 3D rather than just expecting to take extremely detailed models and trying to put them inside somebody's IDP.
Okay, cool. Cheers for that. Fernando, I know that you're sat quietly in the corner there. Did you want to add anything on 3D?
Yeah, sure. I'll pipe in. I agree with you, Michael, when you're saying that technology down the road, this is going to be not that big of an issue later on as resources get better, computers get a lot faster. But right now, I think it's for us, it's a choice for the program, because where are you going to be viewing this 3D model at? Are you going to be viewing on a laptop, a desktop, or is the maintainer going to have it on a tablet, right, on an iPad out in the field? Those are the kind of questions you're going to want to ask when deciding if you're going to be adding these very large 3D models into the viewer. And for us, we rely mostly on the OS or any plugins to view that viewer. So as the 3D model gets larger in size, obviously it's going to eat up more and more resources. So those are the questions you're going to have to ask: is what types of devices are we viewing this on? But for the most part, there's really not much you can do at the viewer level for these large 3D models. That has to be done before it even gets there. You have to decide to maybe dial these things down a bit before you even get there. So that's kind of the approach we're looking at, is this could be done more on the authoring side.
Excellent. Cheers, Fernando. Right, Christian, I have a question for you. Unfortunately, my mobile phone is displaying it to me in actual HTML form, so I'm going to have to try and read between the tags here and figure out what I'm being asked. So,
okay.
So I have a question for the Corel team. We're moving on to some software specific. We've only got 2 or 3 questions left. So I have a question for the Corel team. I often have to work in large 3D models produced in NX. I export the files as both IGES and step files. Quite often I am working in a file size greater than 1 gigabyte. The software we currently employ struggles with this file size. Is there any limitations to file size using the Corel technical suite? Does the file size have any impact on the software performance? I think I read that quite well.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think nobody has found the stone of wisdom here already, but yeah, 3D data just behaves. You have something on the hard drive, which is 1 gig, but what you have to consider is how it develops in your memory of the computer. So it can significantly grow or stay the same. It's always different. It depends. You cannot say if you use the step format, it's larger or smaller. On if you use NX, it's that way. It's actually a matter of testing. What I can say is, but it's probably on the end not really measurable, that the solution we count on is very flexible and behaves very good. And you will reach one point where you say, okay, at this certain point, the 3D model is just too big. And then you can consider using server-based conversion methods. So we offer for that additionally a server who pre-converts the CAD data you point on in the XVL 3D format, which is very small and behaves very, very flexible. So you have to find this out. And this is why we extended the trial period to 30 days of our solution, that you can try everything on premise yourself.
Yeah, I was about to say, if you weren't going to say it and you did throw it in there, said you could always download the trial and have a go, and see if you can break it or make it. So, and Christian, I know that the Corel team are always on hand to answer any questions. So and you're more than happy to do that. So, all I would say, Tony, is download the trial, give it a go, and see if it's any better. Would be my suggestion. So I have a question for Sarah. You talked about annotations in your I'm looking at you in the eye here, but I should be looking at it. So annotations, are they global annotations? How long do they take to appear across all of the user's devices, and can you lock them so no one can delete them?
Okay, so we've got a few different types of annotations available in Ultra Portal. So you can actually choose when you're writing the annotation itself as to whether it's going to be a local annotation or a global annotation.
And can we lock
So
them down?
with the and so
sorry.
you can lock them down. You can it's only the user who created the annotation itself who's able to delete the annotations. And with regards to global annotations, they should be available instantaneously once one user has added that annotation to that document. As soon as that document is loaded up by another user, it will be instantly available for them to view.
Excellent. Lou, I don't know whether you want to talk to your viewer about annotations. I know because it depends on the deployment method, right? But whether you're connected, disconnected, or whichever. But have a talk to annotations.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we've probably got a similar model in that, but if you're connected or disconnected, you will be able to share your annotations across the whole community because there is a sync method in there. I think longer term plans, interestingly, seem to be on this whole enterprise-wide of gathering lots of annotations along with all the other data. So, it comes down, it's almost a question of what do you do with all the other data that's generated from ITP usage as well. And that is becoming a big deal, and it raises some really interesting questions about ITP. So it's the usage, it's the amount of time you're spending on things, it's the trail you've left. Have you used the ITP as well? So there's annotations, and there's lots of other interesting information to be had from an ITP as well.
Yeah, I think that ties in nicely to the kind of work that TLM Nexus are doing as well. If you could track how somebody's using an IETP, the clicks that someone's doing, how often are they clicking on something? Does that identify a training need? Does that identify a product problem? There's lots of stuff that we can be doing. Aston, I don't know whether you've got anything in your viewer around annotations, and if you want to talk about global or local annotations.
Nothing more major to add other than it's similar to, it depends if you're connected or disconnected. I think a lot of our customers are talking about mainly having an offline view, so it's making sure that they reconnect themselves as and when. Interesting about the, how often or how many times something is as an annotation. PTC often talking about things like ThingWorks for their analytical side of things to look at, how many times things are being used, how many times problems are being found, and kind of pushing it out to the ThingWorks platform that way. So kind of rather than connecting it back, sending it out to another platform to gather that information.
Excellent, Fernando. I know that you're in the thrusts of developing your viewer, and what about annotations?
Yeah. So that's a very, very new feature for Eagle Vision currently, but yeah, the approach we're taking is going to be similar to everyone else's. When you're connected to the server, obviously you're going to have the capability to do the global annotations, and then even have the choice to maybe do some of the user-based annotations, meaning the local ones for your user account and so forth. What we're looking into for the future is if, let's say, you go offline, you take that item, you download it on a tablet, and the maintainer makes some notes, right? They're stepping through a procedure. We want to be able to connect back to the mothership and backfill those annotations. And that's something we do with our MMIS tool, which is our web-based maintenance system. So we're looking at that same technology to utilize for our viewer in the future. That way you're able to connect back to the mothership and not lose those annotations, and have them get filled back into the CSDB. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now.
Excellent. And while I've got you on, I'll let you kick this one off. So and we'll fire around the table really quickly on this. Do the vendors, or are the vendors supporting tablet and mobile device deployment?
Say that one. I'm sorry, Mike. Cut out a little. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, it's all about tablet and mobile device deployment of IETPs. So we were asked, are the vendors supporting Surface Pro, iPad Pro, Galaxy, these kind of things?
Yeah. So that is definitely a large consideration we took when we first started developing Eagle Vision. That's why we tried to make it plug-in free, and we're trying to keep it that way. If of course it's getting harder as you're adding more bells and whistles. but we're able to actually view our item on a Surface Pro right now because a lot of the technology is based with some of the Microsoft stuff. And for other tablets like Android, iOS, we do have the ability to actually either connect to it remotely, or you could just download the item and then view it that way as HTML in a browser. And so that's kind of the approach we're taking, because we understand that there's the need for this to be able to view your publications on many different devices. So that's definitely something we are looking into strongly.
Excellent. Lou, your thoughts?
Well, I guess we have a world where you're either connected or disconnected, and if you're connected, you can pretty much view it on anything that's really got a browser. If you are disconnected, at the moment we are restricted to Windows, but this time next year we'll remove that restriction. You'll be able to go disconnect, and the reason we have a restriction is because our data is encrypted on it, and so we need a little bit of a helper thing there at the moment to do that. But this time next year we'll be able to do online offline on Windows, iOS and Android.
Sarah?
Yes, again, very similarly, because Ultra Portal is browser based, and particularly in the last release that we've done, we took some time to optimize our interface to make sure that being able to view it on a tablet or a mobile and in much different responsive environments, we've optimized our interface to deal with that. We're looking into offline accessibility at the moment. Currently, Ultra Portal is exclusively online, but we are hoping with our next release to be implementing some offline functionality so that you'd be able to download and use it exclusively from a tablet or mobile that isn't connected to either the internet or your network.
Excellent. And finally, Aston, on that one?
Yeah, so QPSL Viewpoint supports both online and offline, and it's a HTML5 based viewing. So the theory is, we assume most people probably want to view it on laptop, but we'll also then support tablets and other mobile devices as well. So that's available from the start.
Excellent. And I'm going to throw this one out there because we're slightly over the hour. I'm going to start with you, Dave, and CGM versus SVG, which one's better? Go, Dave.
It's a draw.
It's a draw.
It's a tie.
It's a tie. Okay, Aston, CGM versus SVG. You can't say it's a draw. Don't follow the expert. Don't follow the expert.
No. Got to be SVG. It's the modern world.
Okay, Lou.
SVG every time.
SVG, Sarah.
I would also go SVG, but I'm possibly biased because I've been doing a lot of development on that recently.
All right, perfect. And Mark and Tony, we don't care, right? Fernando, what do you think?
As if it's no mystery, I think SVG, definitely.
Excellent. So
just add something, Mike.
Yeah, please do,
Mike.
Dave, you're not going to start.
Really depends
you're
what
not going to start a fight, though, are you? Let's just go.
Yeah, the answer really is the answers you're getting is it depends what you're using it for. So if you're delivering to a program, if you're a supplier, you're on an S1000D program, then you have to deliver CGM. If you want to display that file, in an IETM, then use an SVG. But I wouldn't recommend you use SVG for data exchange, as your archive. So that's why I said it was a tie.
Yeah, okay. And I think you're right. I support multiple customers, as I mentioned this morning. A lot of them are exclusively in SVGs. That's all they'll do. That's all they'll use. And the problem is they've gone off and developed their own profile, which means that if S1000D introduces something in the future, are they going to be compliant, or are they going to be doing their own S1000D versions of SVG? And I think you talk about profiles in your webinar that you did last week. I'm pushing people to your webinar that you did last week, so where you talk about profiles. So that just leads me to say, everybody, I know that we're just over the hour. It's been a great day today. Lots of virtual debate, which has been great. We always have really good discussions at TDW-Live, and this is why we like to have these practitioner type discussions around the realities of creating and delivering. Today we've been talking predominantly around S1000D, but structured documents and how we get that support information out to our end users. So everybody that's around the virtual table here, thank you very much for supporting. And if any other questions come in, I will forward them to you. I'm going to close today. We're going to be starting. Christian, you're online today, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. So we will be starting again tomorrow, but tomorrow is more of the it's actually the ASD day, so it's actually being looked after by Phil Williams from TDI, although I'm doing all of the mothership stuff here. Any questions come in overnight? I know that some of the US and the Australian contingent have been sending some in out of hours, so please do keep them coming in. I'm going to close us for the day today. Those of you who joined us on social media, you're very quiet, but thank you very much for joining us. Everyone else, see you tomorrow.